I'd like to thank C.F.R for sending me this lawn and garden cart that has dump capabilities. Yes, you heard me right, like a dump truck. It dumps. But there is some assembly required. So today I'm going to show you how to assemble this cart. I like to start by pulling everything out of the box and organizing it before I get started assembling. And that was easy because they put everything in the cart and look, empty, one pull. Pretty good. I actually started with cleaning up my work area. This is what it looked like when it first come out of the box. The dump handle is going to go onto the cart first, but I like to put Loctite on all my hardware, unless they have nylon locking bolts, which this does not. And while I'm at it, I go ahead and put the Loctite on all the rest of the hardware so that I get this step over with, and I'm not stopping every step or two to put Loctite on this and that. There are wrenches provided, but I prefer to use my own. Next, this piece right here goes right here with 4 bolt holes here. So these 4 bolt holes go to the front, or actually the back. And because I've already put Loctite on the bolts, I won't have to do that now. I can just go ahead and start putting things together. Next, we need 2 of these medium length bolts and the nuts to go with them. Again, I've already put Loctite on all the bolts, so we don't have to do that step again. Working on the straight axle. The other axle is offset. We're working on the straight axle. I'm going to connect it to this T-shaped bar here. I'm going to go from the T-shaped bar through the axle, put the nuts on the back. It's a 1/2 inch wrench. Next is 2 of the longest bolts up from the bottom. By the bottom, I mean we've got this protruding out the top. And the axle with the 90°, and that's pointed to the back. Okay, don't tighten these up yet, because this has some wiggle room. I need the wiggle room to get these struts to line up with all the holes before tightening anything down. Wait, that's not right. Did you see the mistake I made here? This has to go to the outside here and the inside there. I tried to put it on the inside down here. That's not going to work. Let me show you before I tighten this up. These go to the outside of the frame here, the inside of the axle here. I've got these nuts facing in, these nuts facing in, these nuts facing up. I'm going to take this nut off, set it aside with a 15/16 wrench that fits it, this washer, and I want you to see this is a bearing here. And that bearing has a little bit of grease on it. Doesn't seem to be much though. And I like to use some real sticky anti-seize. Painted on the bearing race, on the bearing itself. And that should last a good long while. Make sure that this part of the bearing race, not this part of the bearing race, goes toward the bearing. And this is a nylon lock washer, so we don't need any Loctite. Now it's starting to look like something. Got two of these medium length bolts. Go back here, facing in, washer, and a nylon lock nut. What did we say about nylon lock nuts? They don't need the Loctite. They're also good for using in a place like this where we don't want to tighten them all the way. We just want them barely snug enough to hold the thing not firmly but loosely so that it can pivot. Turn this where you can see what I'm doing here. See, still loose. So I passed the bolt through here. I put the washer there, the nylon lock nut here, and here. I've got about the same amount of bolts sticking out past each nut. I've got a similar gap here and here. And I do the release, let it pivot. It pivots nice and freely. All right, I'm going to put the handle on. A lot of pain in that hole. I want the handle to be able to pivot, so I don't want it too tight. And they did not provide a nylon lock nut for this. A regular nut. It does have some tightness pinching that spread together, which should hold it and allow it to continue to pivot. But just to be sure, I grabbed an extra nut. I'm going to put it on here. I'm going to tighten that nut against the first nut, and that should lock it in place. See what I've done there? Tighten the nut against the nut, and they'll lock in place. And then you've got plenty of movement there. The wheels, want to put the valve stems out. You can get to them. Flip it on the axle. There's a washer. And then cotter key. I'm sorry, can you see better now? Put the wheel on. It's got 2 bearings in it already that are already installed. Valve stem out. Cotter key goes. Well, let's turn the valve stem out of the way. Cotter key goes up, trapping the washer in there. And then just take the needle nose, bend that over, slightly bend the other one in the opposite direction, and it's trapped. And now, what was a box full of stuff is a garden cart that has dump capabilities. Isn't that neat? That's something else. And it's got an all steel frame, pneumatic wheels, steering. That's pretty neat. So if you're still watching this, I want to give you some bonus material because I really appreciate you guys that watched the whole video. What I'm going to do with these wheels, you notice I've only got 1 cotter key on here, and I didn't put the cotter keys on the rest of them yet, because these bearings, can you hear that? They are dry. There's no grease or oil or anything in there. And if I just put oil in there, it's not going to last very long. So I'm going to melt some high temperature grease and pour it down in there. Let it soak down in there and dry. Now this is a separate bearing right here on this side from the other bearing. So I'm going to have to pour it in one side down in the crack, let it cool off and get in that bearing, then come back, heat some grease, pour it in the other side. I can do all 4 wheels at the same time, but it's still a 2-step because I can do one side of all 4 and then the other side of the other 4. That should make those bearings last much longer. I'm also going to measure for the bottom of this and cut a piece of wood to put in the bottom of this to protect the plastic. You've already seen me put anti-seize in this bearing, and those are going to be my mods so far. Try to make a good cart a really great cart. If you have any more suggestions, please let me know in the comments of what I might be able to do to make this even better. Might even make a little piece of wood for this and take the bolts out, put 4 holes in the piece of wood and put that there as like a giant washer to help strengthen that piece of plastic right there where this latch is. Hey, I appreciate you, and you're awesome. Get off the couch and get dirty.